Hey everybody, I'm here today with William Thurston, who's the co-founder and creative director of WTTW Games. How's it going?
It's going, my man. Wednesday. It's nice here in Michigan. It's like 80 here right now. So, you know,
80 in
yeah, it's feeling
Michigan.
pretty good.
That's
Yeah,
good.
no, it's surprising.
Awesome. All right. So I'm just gonna jump into the question here. So much of your work experiences are in sales, just going through your LinkedIn. Have you always had an
Yeah,
interest in breaking into the video game industry, prior to sales or during your time with sales or
I've always enjoyed video games. I think the very first game that I like really remember playing was Banjo-Kazooie on the Nintendo 64. And I mean, I've had all the consoles since then. Big PlayStation fan. It's never been like a hard idea like get into games, and go do that. I've always been the creative type, dabbled in art and obviously writing, and narrative and all of that good stuff, and being able to bring that to life is always something I've wanted to do, whether it was movies or books. But I've talked about a number of creative endeavors in my life, and I decided I'm 30 years old and it's time to, if you're going to do it, just do it.
all right, awesome. Um, so how have your experiences in sales kind of translated to your work with WTTW?
The biggest part that I would say translates over is the networking, communicating, being able to talk to people. Obviously, there's not a real large correlation between video games and tech sales where I was in, other than like the tech overlap. I've always been into tech, obviously with cell phones, and then I worked for HP for a little while. Actually, HP is where I got my first gaming desktop. I won it at one of the company events, and so that's what I'm still rocking. I just put some upgrades in it this year. Um, so there's always been like a minor correlation there, and I was hoping that my time in HP would allow me to network and maybe break in. That didn't happen. So not a lot of correlation, but enough. And my time, I mean, I'm a researcher. If I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna make sure I know what I'm doing before I jump in. So I looked a lot into games. I looked a lot into founding a studio, some of the positions required, longevity on, how long it takes to put games out, as well as obviously all of the news articles we see every day regarding a number of layoffs or new games and all of the other good stuff that comes with that. So
Okay. So you and your co-founder Trey founded the studio in February. How have you seen the studio grow since then?
it's been astronomical, honestly. Like you said, we started in February. Um, and we are now, I think we just passed 1,300 followers on LinkedIn, which is quite an achievement for a minor volunteer led studio run out of Battle Creek, Michigan here. Um, all of our um, employees, I guess we'll call them, are volunteers. They know what the vision is, and that vision is to turn this into a paid project, of course. But we we just kind of, he's a lot of back end stuff, but he's always been real big into games. And we started and we were like, here's my idea. I've been putting some brainstorming together for quite a few years actually. And then I was like, all right, I think I've got enough. And that's actually what Project Poseidon is or was. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay. So, on your LinkedIn, the studio posted as it found volunteers. And as volunteers have come and become part of your studio, how have you seen the studio develop its own personality?
So I always had the vision was to tell stories with an impact, make games with an impact. And so we really strive to make sure that all the volunteers see that vision, even beyond the monetary side of it, but being able to say, whether it sells or not, we put a game out and we're happy that this game told the story of any number of societal issues, whether it's domestic violence. I know one of our upcoming ideas that we're many years in the future, sexual assault, but games that are underrepresented but can tell a story and can relate to people, um And so our vision is to make a difference, really. We've already agreed that all of our games will come with a donation, whether that's 5% or 10%. The donation will go to some organization that matches the theme of the game we're pursuing. And that's just to, show that we're serious about the change we intend to make.
Awesome. So, you're a beginner yourself in the industry and reading about the studio, you guys are kind of dedicated as well to helping beginners break in. So, as I said, as a beginner yourself, in what ways is the studio aiming to help other beginners in the industry?
So we obviously there's a few roles that you want some experience in, but we're not looking for experience. We want passion. We want know-how, right? We don't want to just take someone who has no idea what they're doing, but we're not requiring someone with a college degree. We're not requiring someone with any number of experience in the industry. Our job, our role is to help these people build a portfolio. Our goal is that they decide to stay with us. But we are here to help them say, look, I've worked on a game. Here's the Steam link, or here's the Steam page. But we're also trying to ensure, so with funding, we'll come talk with lawyers on ensuring that all of our creatives can keep the rights to their art. And the big thing that came along with that was the Microsoft closing of Tango Gameworks with Hi-Fi Rush. And a lot of the developers and creatives there actually lost the rights to their work at all, so they weren't even allowed to put it on display in future portfolios. And that really seemed shitty, if I can say that here. um, these people put their time and their work and their heart into this, and then they can't even take that work with them. And so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to our people as well. What good is a portfolio built up if you don't get to take it with you?
You talked about it already, but you know, WTTW wants to tell powerful stories and effective stories. That's what you said. And so as a studio that's dedicated to telling those stories, um, in the future or now, are there any stories or concepts that you're one day excited to share with people? Or any,
Yeah, so we've put Project Poseidon on the shelf for a little bit, but that game will focus on a lot of heavier themes. I don't want to say too much, being that it's so far out in production now at this point. But we are working on a new game. It's called A Refurbished Life. It's pretty far along in ideation. We haven't started programming or putting that together, but we are working on art and overall like narrative fine points. And that will actually tell a story of rebuilding your life after domestic violence, but more in a manner of empowerment and less of a focus on the domestic violence itself. So that will play a backbeat to the story. But as you get through, you'll pick up on these hints from dialogue, or your sister in the game may say something, and as a player, you'll go, oh my goodness, But it's not going to be the forefront. We want it to be fun. We want it to be cozy, which is the genre it'll be in. So we don't want to put that in your face like an RPG would necessarily. But that is the first game that we are working on. So
so, I was gonna ask because I noticed you guys posting that you were working on a cozy game, so that must be it. I thought it was Project Poseidon when I read it. So, but you said that you put Project Poseidon on the back burner for now, as opposed to the game you're working on. But Project Poseidon, you have it slated for release in 2027. That's what your first post
it,
talking about it said.
yeah. So it was, and I scheduled it out so long because it's essentially my magnum opus. If there's lack of a better term, it's I've been tossing the idea around for the last 4 years or so, slowly jotting ideas down, putting story beats together and stuff. And as we founded the studio, me and Trey realized the scope of that project was just enormous. Not that it couldn't be done, but the amount of time and effort it would take with two people on opposite sides of the country, both working full-time jobs, it just didn't seem feasible. And that was when, so that was after the formation of the studio, of course, but before the volunteer aspect. I actually connected Ayla Derrick at K-Bear Games through LinkedIn, and that was what inspired me to pursue the volunteer position or the volunteer side of the studio. Um, and so after talking, we realized, why don't we work on putting out a few smaller games that we can then use some of the code or some of the gameplay mechanics that we've used to incorporate into Project Poseidon, which I said will be like my big release here. I'd love to see it come to fruition as early as 2027, but obviously that takes money, that takes funding, and so that requires something smaller that we can put out to earn some income in the meantime. So
Okay. I was gonna ask, what's it been like working on the game, but you pretty much answered the question for me. Um, you know, did you have an idea in mind of what kind of, gameplay it would have? I know it's so
yeah,
far out in the
yeah. So I played Hades for the first time right about the time it came out, and that really redefined video games for me. And I bring that up because Project Poseidon will be a roguelite in the realm of Hades. It will follow Greek mythology, and it's gonna this early out with no details. It sounds like, oh my god, he's just making Hades. Um, it's not. We're looking at pixel art for it. We are looking at a varying degree of playable characters, um, and each character would have their own story tackling the issue at hand. But you would essentially be playing as Poseidon's wife. Her name is Amphitrite in Greek mythology, and you break free from your servitude, we'll call it, and set on a mission to rescue survivors of Poseidon's transgressions. I'll leave it as simple as we know. Greek mythology is full of the Greek gods, doing any number of vile things to humans and others. And so this will tackle surviving and overcoming that from various aspects like motherhood and um, um, there's a trans issue in there that actually follows through the Greek story. So everything is true to Greek mythology with a few creative endeavors, but not much of it will stray from what we know.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up most of my, questions relating to the studio, but at this point I like to move on to more like fun
Yeah.
questions. So first thing I'm gonna ask is what is your favorite game of all time?
So my favorite series is Borderlands. So Borderlands is my favorite series, but I am a really big fan of narrative games. So The Last of Us is one of my all-time favorites. I've played it with every re-release, bought the second one. Um, I remember so very clearly playing it the day it came out and getting to that scene. Spoiler alert here. I know it's a 10-year-old game now at this point, but for anyone that hasn't, there's a scene at the very beginning where you are playing as Joel, the main character, and you are carrying your daughter. And I have two daughters. I have a 10-year-old and I have an 11-month-old. And so you are carrying this this child in your arms, and you get to a military man, and you say, "She's not sick, and I'm not sick." He calls his commanding officer and turns around and pulls the trigger, and my jaw hit the floor, and I cried like real tears, and I was just like, "Oh!" And that was when I was really like, if I ever tell a story, that's the kind of story I want to tell. Like it and Handsome Jack in Borderlands 2 is such just an iconic villain. Like he has a, a sound reasoning for why he is. And the voice actor just he does it so well. So yeah, I would say those two. But the game that really got me into video games was hands down The Legend of Zelda. Twilight Princess was under than one of my favorites.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like The Legend of Zelda is really popular amongst the people that I interview. A lot of people seem to love The Legend of
It's
Zelda.
iconic. It's one of those. Yeah, it tells stories. I mean, in the way that they're able to characters and change the story, and nothing's redundant or repetitive is a feat in itself.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a lot of Nintendo consoles growing up, so I really missed out. So moving on from that, uh, you know 20 questions?
Yeah.
All right. I've got a character here, um, and you have to guess who they are in 20
Okay.
questions. Okay.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm asking questions, right? Trying to
Yep,
figure out
you
who it
get
is.
20 questions to
Okay.
figure out who it is.
Let's see. Is the game from the 2000s or later?
Yes. Yes and no.
Is the character a man?
Yes.
Does the character use guns?
Does the character use guns?
Yes.
No.
Is the character from an RPG? Like open world RPG, I'll specify.
Not that I know of.
Okay. Is it a first party title, meaning Xbox, PlayStation, or Nintendo Direct?
No.
Is the character from Western development,
Um,
as in United States?
yes.
Is it Kratos?
No. By the way, um, I guess I didn't m mention this properly. Uh, the character happens to be in a video game, but they're not they're not originating in video games.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the character did not appear in a video game first.
No.
Okay. That's tough because there's not a lot of games that were adapted into movies first. Oh. Well, now I'm thrown off. Now I'm really shaken up.
Well, I just
Is it
I wanted
is
to
it
say
Geralt
that
of Rivia from The Witcher?
no, no.
Oh. Okay, but they were in a movie first, not from a book. I'll
Eh,
I'll ask that in a 20 questions format. Are they from a book?
yes.
Okay. Their first appearance in a movie.
Is their first appearance in a movie?
Yes. Or
Yes.
okay. Okay. Part of me says Resident Evil, but I'm pretty sure that was a video game first. So that doesn't work. Does the character have long hair?
Yes.
Is the character from a franchise?
Yeah.
Let me rephrase what I meant by that. Is it part of like a multi-series movie release? Like a
There
saga or a
are
trilogy?
yeah, they're multiple.
Okay. I feel like Star Wars, but that's too easy. How many questions I got left? Not
You
many, I think.
I think you've got 8, 11, 12, 13. Actually, you've got 7.
Seven. Okay. Does the character wield any weapons?
Yes.
Are they melee weapons?
Kind of.
Okay. Is this character from Star Wars?
No.
Is this character from Dragon Ball Z?
No.
Is this character human?
Yes.
Man, you picked a good one. I'm racking my brain here. Again, there's not many movies that were movies before they were games. And other than Star Wars, I don't know that I can think of any.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. The the movie, I think there are like movie taught like game to movie games, but most of the games from this franchise have their own stories that don't really include a lot of the characters from the movies. So think of it like, for example, like Star Wars Outlaws is coming up, but it's not based on a particular Star Wars film or character, rather the universe.
Okay. Was it a book before it was a movie?
Yes.
Did I already ask that? Okay.
You asked if there was a book, but I don't think you asked if it was a book before a movie. So it went book, movie, game.
Is this character from Lord of the Rings?
Yes. Technically, that was your last question, but I'll let you keep going just so you can.
I know. I'll make my guess. Let's see. I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan, so I should have asked if it was a book first because that would have really helped. But it's okay. Um, okay, so this person is in a movie. This person has long hair, but they're in a couple of the games. Is this character Legolas?
No,
Okay.
it's
Is it
Gandalf.
Elrond? Ah, okay. Okay.
Sorry, man.
No, you're, hey, that's my fault. If I would have asked the right questions a little bit sooner, I would have been in a better place. But
It's okay.
if I would,
Yeah,
if I would have got to Lord of the Rings quicker, I would have been good. But it's because I didn't ask if it was a book first, and that, so I was like movie first, then whatever else came next, and that was where I was.
it is what it is. Um, all right. So I don't know if you've seen any of my videos, but I'll sometimes I like to do keep five, cut fives, but I've changed it up a little bit. So I'm going to give you two. I've got three sets of these, and you're going to have two choices, and you're going to have to keep one and cut one, just between two
Okay.
games.
Okay.
Um, so first up we have The Witcher 3 and Skyrim.
Okay. So, God, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. The Witcher 3 never caught my eye, and I have never played it.
So you're
Um,
gonna
Skyrim. And I've downloaded The Witcher 3, but then it's the whole game is old argument. And but I've read the books. Like I'm a fan of The Witcher. I love it. The game, I think it just got off a little slow, and I just never got into it.
right. So guess we're keeping Skyrim and kind of The Witcher. All right. Um, I'm hoping that you're a fan of these two games, because if not, then it's gonna be
We're
really
just gonna end
easy.
the interview, huh?
Elden Ring versus Bloodborne.
Ooh, okay. So yes, played them both. I'm weird when it comes to the Soulsborne games because the horror genre, I'm not a fan of spiders, right? And Bloodborne's got
Okay.
them plentiful. Um, I also really like the combat in both, and they play so differently. But I'm gonna have to give it to Elden Ring, I think, and it's got nothing to do with it being newer because I've beaten them both, and Bloodborne is fantastic. But I think the variety of just overall movements and the open world aspect really plays into Elden Ring really well.
So this is the last matchup here. Um, The Last of Us or Hades.
Oh, oh,
Uh,
all right. So you threw this one together on the fly, I see.
Well, you said that your two favorites are The
Yeah,
Last of Us and
yeah.
Hades.
Man, that's tough because they play so incredibly differently,
Yeah.
and they both tell such fantastic stories. But and they both changed games for me. This is such a tough one. My God. I think I'm gonna have to give it to The Last of Us. No discredit to Hades because it completely changed for me. Like I had never played a roguelite before Hades. And so I picked it up and I was like, holy shit, there's a whole new world out here for me. Uh, but the reaction The Last of Us gave me is what really, I would say that would be what inspired me to like tell stories and be a creative.
Awesome. Well, that's it for the most part. I've only got one last question before we head off. And you know, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Anyone that's considering doing anything, do it. And I know money's always a factor, especially in this economy. And so, by no means am I sitting here with $1 million under my butt and saying get out there and do it. I am literally living paycheck to paycheck, hoping that the studio makes it. And I have faith. I've got a vision. I've got a dream. I've got a team behind me that sees it all. If you're nervous, if you're worried, go for it. Do some research. Find someone that knows what they're doing. Find someone just as passionate. The indie revolution, it's literally happening. I mean, you look around LinkedIn and there's how many studios that are volunteer led or just indie in general. And we've seen the awards in the last year and how many of them went to indies over AAA studios. Um, I mean, it's scary. The world is a scary place, but you're always gonna hate the regret if you go, man, I that could have been me. Um, So do it. Take the leap. If you ever want to connect, chat, LinkedIn, Discord, we've got an open Discord. We're happy to help. I'm happy to be of service and guidance. I work in finance, so I know my way around a little bit, business accounts and that kind of stuff. I'm happy to be a resource, happy to be helpful. I see you out there doing the damn thing. I see it's fairly new, but you're breaking into the industry and getting somewhere. And I mean, you can attest to that, man. Just do it, I guess.
Awesome. Great advice. Well, thank you so much, man. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where your studio goes and the future for you guys.
Yeah, man, I'd love to do maybe a check-in interview in a year or so, or even sooner once the game gets closer to release. Maybe revamp and see where we're sitting on the new project. So
All right, man, we'll do that.
you have a
Awesome.
great day. I appreciate you having me.